Couch in the living room, worn leather, springs that creaked when you sat too hard, had been for watching the evening news, nothing more. That changed on a Tuesday. "You're sleeping on the couch until you apologize," Linda said. Her voice was flat, cold as the October wind rattling the kitchen window. Harold set down his coffee cup. "Apologize for what?" "You know what you said to Derek at church? About his truck payment?" He didn't remember saying anything about Derek's truck. Barely spoke to his son-in-law at all that Sunday. He told her so. Linda wouldn't look at him, just pointed toward the living room. "The couch. Until you apologize for something you apparently don't even remember doing." That night, Harold carried his pillow down the hallway. The bedroom door latched behind him, a sound he'd never heard in 4 decades of marriage. But that was only the beginning. The first night on that couch, Harold didn't sleep much. The springs dug into his lower back, and every time he shifted, the leather groaned like an old barn door. He stared at the ceiling, running through Sunday service in his mind. Derek had been there with Jessica and the kids. Harold had nodded at them across the sanctuary. That was it. No conversation about trucks, payments, or anything else. Morning came gray through the living room curtains. Harold's back felt like someone had taken a 2x4 to it. He sat up slow, working the kinks out, and heard Linda in the kitchen. The coffee maker burbled and hissed. That sound used to mean she was making a pot for both of them, their morning ritual for longer than he cared to count. He walked into the kitchen. Linda stood at the counter, her back to him, pouring coffee into her own mug. The second mug, his mug, the one with the faded John Deere logo, sat in the cabinet, unused. "Morning," Harold said. Linda didn't turn around. "Coffee's made if you want some." He poured his own cup, the silence between them thick as motor oil. She left the kitchen without another word, carrying her mug upstairs. Harold heard the bedroom door close. Not slam, just close. Somehow that was worse. 3 days passed like that. Harold on the couch, back stiffening up more each morning. Linda moving through the house like he was a piece of furniture she had to navigate around. He tried apologizing on day 2, even though he didn't know what for. "Linda, I'm sorry if I said something that upset Derek. I honestly don't remember it, but if I did, I'm sorry." She looked at him over the rim of her coffee cup. Her eyes were flat, distant. "We'll see," she said, and that was all. On the third evening, she made pot roast. His favorite, the one with carrots and potatoes that fell apart on your fork, the way her mother used to make it. The smell filled the house, rich and warm, onions caramelizing in the Dutch oven. Harold felt something loosen in his chest. Maybe this was her way of saying things were okay again. Maybe the storm was passing. They ate dinner at the table together for the first time in 3 days. Linda even asked him about his day, though he hadn't done much besides split firewood and fix a section of fence that was leaning. They talked about small things, the weather turning colder, the leaves starting to fall, whether they needed to call the furnace guy before winter really set in. After dinner, Harold cleared the plates. When he came back from the kitchen, he saw the envelope on the table, manila, business-sized, with a sticky note attached in Linda's handwriting. "Just a formality, makes things easier for Jessica when we're gone. Sign here." Inside was a document, 3 pages long, titled Family Trust Amendment. Linda's signature was already on the last page, dated 2 days ago. A yellow arrow sticker pointed to the line where Harold was supposed to sign. He sat down, started reading. Legal language, dense as brambles. Words like co-trustees and fiduciary responsibility and incapacity provisions. He skimmed faster, looking for something that made sense. And then a phrase caught his eye halfway down the second page. "Upon determination of diminished capacity by any licensed physician." Harold read it again, then a third time. Why would they need a clause about diminished capacity? He was 67, healthy as a man his age could expect. Linda was 64, same story. What was this for? He picked up the pen beside the envelope, looked at the signature line. His hand hovered there, and something in his gut, instinct honed over 40 years of running a factory floor, knowing when a machine was about to fail just by the sound it made, told him to stop. He set the pen down, folded the document, slipped it into his shirt pocket. Linda came out of the kitchen, drying her hands on a dish towel. "Did you sign it?" Still reading it, Harold said. Want to understand it before I put my name on it. Her smile tightened. It didn't reach her eyes. Harold, it's just a formality. Our lawyer said every family should have one. Makes things simpler if something happens to one of us. I'll look it over tonight, he said. Get back to you tomorrow. Linda's jaw clenched. She turned and walked back into the kitchen without another word. Harold heard her rinse her coffee cup, set it in the sink harder than necessary, then head upstairs. The bedroom door closed again. That same sound. Not angry, just final. Harold sat at the table with the document in his pocket, feeling the weight of it against his chest. Something was wrong. He didn't know what yet, but 42 years of marriage had taught him to recognize the sound of trouble, even when it came wrapped in pot roast and sticky notes. He pulled the document out, read it again from the beginning, and this time he didn't stop until he'd gone through every word. By the time he finished, his coffee was cold and his hands were shaking. Harold didn't sleep that night either. He lay on the couch with the document folded in his shirt pocket, reading and rereading the phrases in his mind. Diminished capacity, co-trustee authority, binding arbitration. The words didn't sit right, like a puzzle with pieces that almost fit but left gaps you couldn't quite see. At dawn, he gave up on sleep, made his own coffee in the quiet kitchen, carried it out to his truck, and drove the 1.5 miles down the county road to Ray Mitchell's place. Ray was already up, standing on his porch in a flannel robe and work boots, coffee mug in hand. 72 years old, widower for 2 years now, and the only neighbor Harold trusted without question. Little early for a social call, Ray said as Harold climbed out of the truck. Need you to look at something. They went inside. Ray's kitchen was tidy the way a man's kitchen gets when his wife is gone, and he's had to learn where everything goes. Harold pulled out the document, spread it on the table between their coffee cups. Ray read it slow, lips moving slightly. When he got to the second page, his face went pale. He looked up at Harold, then back down at the paper, then up again. Wait here, Ray said. He disappeared into the back room, his study, where he'd spent the last 2 years since Nancy died, doing God knows what to keep himself busy. When he came back, he was carrying a manila folder, thick enough that it didn't want to close all the way. Ray set it on the table and opened it. Photographs. 8x10s, printed on regular paper from what looked like a home printer, but clear enough. The first one showed Derek, Harold's son-in-law, Jessica's husband, standing on Harold's back 40 with another man. The other man had a measuring wheel, the kind surveyors use. They were walking the fence line, taking notes. When was this? Harold asked. 3 weeks ago, Thursday afternoon. You were in town getting your truck's oil changed. The next photo showed Derek and the surveyor closer up, pointing at something in the distance. The third showed them at the property line between Harold's land and Ray's, examining a survey stake. Why were you taking pictures? Because I saw him out there the week before too, Ray said. Thought it was odd. Derek doesn't farm, doesn't do anything with land, so why is he measuring yours? Ray pulled out another document from the folder. Found this in your trash 2 weeks back. You threw it away, but I pulled it out because the header caught my eye. It was a property appraisal. Harold's farm, all 160 acres. Current value estimated at just over $2 million. At the bottom, 2 signature lines. One said property owner with Linda's name typed underneath. Her signature was there, real and clear. The other line said co-owner with Harold's name typed underneath. That signature looked like his, but he'd never signed this document, had never even seen it before. That's not my signature, Harold said. I know. Ray pulled out one more thing. A business card, slightly bent at the corner. Meadowbrook Memory Care, compassionate 24/7 support for your loved ones. Harold's mouth went dry. Where'd you get this? It fell out of Linda's purse last Sunday at church. She was getting her hymnal, the card slipped out. I picked it up to hand it back to her, but she'd already walked off. I meant to give it to her after service, but then I got to thinking, why does Linda need a memory care brochure? The room felt smaller suddenly. Harold picked up the card, turned it over, nothing written on the back, just the printed information. Address 3 counties over. Phone number. A website. Ray, Harold said slowly. Nancy, before she died, you said your daughter tried to… Yeah, Ray's voice cracked just slightly. Started with little things. Diane saying Nancy was forgetting stuff, doctor's appointments I didn't know about, then a competency evaluation I never authorized, then a judge's signature, and Nancy was in a home, and I couldn't get her out. How long did it take? 6 weeks from the first doctor visit to the day they moved her. She died 4 months later. Didn't recognize me the last 8 weeks. Thought I was a stranger who came to bother her. Harold looked at the photographs again. Derek measuring his land, the forged appraisal, the memory care brochure, the trust document in his pocket with its clauses about diminished capacity. They're doing it to me, he said. Aren't they? Ray nodded. Looks that way. Harold stood up, walked to the window, looked out at his own land visible in the distance. The back 40 his father had cleared by hand, acre by acre, back when Harold was just a boy. The land his father left him, just him, not Linda, when the old man died last year. Linda wouldn't, Harold started, but the words dried up. Because she'd already put him on the couch for an insult that never happened. She'd already gotten him to nearly sign a document he didn't understand. She'd already had his signature forged on an appraisal he'd never seen. What do I do? Harold asked. You call Martin Priest, Ray said. He handled your daddy's will, didn't he? Yeah. He's seen this kind of thing before. Hates it. He'll know what to do. Ray paused. But Harold, you need to understand something. If they're really doing this, if Linda and Derek are really trying to get you declared incompetent so they can take the land, they've been planning it for a while, and they're moving fast. Harold drove home as the sun cleared the tree line. When he pulled into his driveway, Linda was in the kitchen making breakfast, eggs and bacon, the smell drifting through the open window. She was humming. He walked in, sat at the table. She served him without a word, then sat across from him with her own plate. Did you sign that paper I left you? She asked, her voice casual, like she was asking about the weather. Still reading it, Harold said. Want to make sure I understand what I'm signing. Linda's smile went tight again. Harold, it's really not complicated. Don't overthink it. I'll get to it, he said. She didn't eat much, just pushed her eggs around her plate, watching him. When she got up to refill her coffee, Harold saw her jaw clench, the muscle jumping under her skin. She left the kitchen without finishing her breakfast. Harold sat alone at the table, the untouched document still in his pocket, and realized something he should have seen days ago. Linda had expected him to sign it by now. Whatever timeline she and Derek were working on, Harold had just thrown it off, and he had no idea what they'd do next. Harold started playing the part Linda wanted him to play. 2 days after his talk with Ray, he asked Linda what day the trash pickup was. Thursday. Always had been Thursday for the 15 years they'd lived in this house. It's Thursday, honey, Linda said, and her eyes lit up just a little. You asked me that yesterday, too. He hadn't, but he nodded, scratched his head like a man trying to remember. Did I? Sorry about that. She made a note on the pad by the refrigerator. Harold saw it later when she was upstairs, asked about trash day twice, forgetting conversations. Sunday came, and they went to church. Harold sat in the pew he'd sat in for 20 years, Linda beside him, but not touching. After the service, old Mrs. Kowalski caught him in the fellowship hall, her hand light on his arm, her voice sugary with pity. Harold, dear, Linda tells us you've been having some memory trouble. Bless your heart. The room went quiet around them. Not completely silent, but quiet enough that Harold knew people were listening. I'm fine, ma'am, he said. Of course you are, dear. She patted his arm like you'd pat a confused child. Of course you are. Half the congregation had heard. Harold saw it in their faces, the sidelong glances, the whispered conversations that stopped when he walked past. Linda had gotten there first, planted the story before he even knew there was a story to tell. His face burned all the way to the truck. That afternoon, Harold went to the pharmacy to pick up his blood pressure medication. The pharmacist, Tom, known him for 20 years, went to the same Rotary Club, leaned across the counter with that same pitying look Mrs. Kowalski had worn. Mr. Patterson, is someone helping you manage your medications? I heard you've been having some trouble keeping things straight. I'm managing fine, Harold said. Well, if you need us to set up a reminder system, we can do that. Lots of folks your age find it helpful. Harold took his prescription and left without another word. In the truck, his hands shook so hard he had to wait 5 minutes before he trusted himself to drive. Linda had called ahead. She'd made sure Tom knew, same as she'd made sure Mrs. Kowalski knew, same as she'd probably made sure half the town knew. Building a story, brick by brick, that Harold Patterson was slipping. When he got home, he split firewood, did it for 2 hours straight until his shirt was soaked through and his hands were blistered. The axe came down hard enough to bury itself in the stump, and he left it there, handle quivering. From across the property line, Ray watched. Didn't say anything, didn't wave, just stood there on his porch, coffee cup in hand, and nodded once. I see you. You're not alone. That evening, just after dark, Harold heard a soft knock on the screen door. Not the front door, the side door that opened onto the porch. He got up from the couch, every muscle sore, and found Emma standing there. His granddaughter, 16, Jessica and Derek's oldest. She looked around like she expected someone to jump out of the shadows. "Grandpa, can we talk? Somewhere Mom can't hear?" They walked out to the barn, old and unused except for storage. Emma pulled out her phone, her hands shaking a little. "I've been recording things," she said. "Mom and Derek talking late at night when they think I'm asleep." She tapped the screen, turned up the volume. Linda's voice came through, tinny but clear. "He's definitely getting worse. Left the stove on yesterday." Harold's chest went tight. "Emma, I haven't cooked in over a week. Your grandma's been making all the meals." Emma's eyes filled up. "I know. That's why I started recording." There was more. Derek's voice in the background. "That land's gonna set us up for life, babe. Your mom knows what she's doing." Jessica, quieter, hesitant. "Are we sure about this?" And Linda again, firm as concrete. "Your inheritance is sure about this." Harold listened to it twice. On the second time through, he had to sit down on an overturned bucket, his legs suddenly unreliable. "Emma," he said carefully, "if your mom finds out you're doing this, she won't." Emma wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. "I'm careful. I delete them off my phone after I send them." "Send them where?" "Your old work email. Remember? You gave me that address when I was little, for school projects. I figured you'd still have it." Harold hadn't checked that email in 2 years. Didn't even remember the password. "How many recordings do you have?" 14. Going back 3 weeks. 3 weeks. Right around the time Derek had been surveying the land. This wasn't something they'd decided on a whim. This was planned, methodical. Harold pulled Emma into a hug, the first real affection he'd felt in weeks. "You're putting yourself at risk for me." "You're the only one who listens to me, Grandpa, who thinks my art school dreams matter instead of just telling me to be practical." Her voice cracked. "I'm not letting them do this to you." After Emma left, slipping back through the dark like she'd never been there, Harold stood in the barn alone. Somewhere in the house, Linda was probably making notes about him, building her case. 14 recordings sat in an email account he couldn't access without Ray's computer. He walked back toward the house, saw the light on in the kitchen. Linda was on the phone, her voice low but audible through the window screen. "He didn't sign the trust document yet. He's stalling." A pause. Jessica's voice, faint through the phone speaker. Linda again. "We move next week, Doctor." "Carter's ready." Harold stood in the dark outside his own house, listening to his wife and daughter plan his future like he wasn't even a person anymore. Just an obstacle. Just something in the way of $2 million worth of land. He thought about Ray's Nancy. How fast it had happened. 6 weeks from the first lie to the locked door of a memory care facility. They were moving next week. He had days, not weeks, to stop this. Martin Priest's office sat above the diner on Main Street, up a narrow staircase that creaked with every step. Frosted glass door with his name in gold lettering, half worn off from 60 years of hands pushing it open. Harold had called him that morning. Martin said to come by at 2. The office looked like it hadn't changed since 1970. File cabinets lined one wall, metal and olive green. A desk buried under stacks of folders. One window overlooking the street, Venetian blinds cutting the afternoon light into stripes. Martin was 70, maybe older, with white hair and reading glasses on a chain around his neck. He'd handled Harold's father's estate. Good man. Fair man. Ray Mitchell called me last week, Martin said before Harold even sat down. Said I might be hearing from you. He told you? Enough. Martin gestured to a chair. Derek called me 10 days ago. Wanted to know about getting a competency evaluation for you. Said the family was concerned. Harold's jaw tightened. What did you tell him? That I'd need to speak with you directly before any evaluation. He didn't like that answer. Martin pulled a legal pad toward him, uncapped a pen. Harold, I've been practicing law for 43 years. I've seen this exact scenario a dozen times. It's always the same playbook. Ray's wife, I know about Nancy, handled her estate after she died. Ray tried to fight the conservatorship, but by the time he got a lawyer, it was too late. Judge had already signed off. Martin looked at Harold over his glasses. They move fast because they have to. The longer you're competent and aware, the harder it is to make the case stick. What do I do? First, you don't sign anything. Not one piece of paper. Martin wrote something on his pad. Second, we need evidence. Ray's got surveillance photos. You said your granddaughter has recordings? In my old work email. Haven't checked it in 2 years. We'll get into it today. Use my computer. Martin stood up, moved to a desktop that looked as old as the file cabinets. Third, we verify every document they've produced. That property appraisal Ray found, if your signature's forged, that's fraud. Criminal fraud. Martin picked up his phone, dialed a number from memory, put it on speaker. Dr. Yates's office, a woman's voice answered. This is Martin Priest, attorney. I need to speak with Dr. Yates about a patient competency evaluation. A pause. Which patient? Harold Patterson. Another pause, longer this time. Let me get the doctor. A minute passed, then a man's voice, older, careful. This is Dr. Yates. Doctor, did you write or authorize a competency evaluation for Harold Patterson? Silence on the line. Then, no. I've never evaluated Mr. Patterson. Don't even know who he is. Would anyone in your office have used your letterhead for an evaluation? Absolutely not. The doctor's voice sharpened. Why are you asking? Someone's using your letterhead for a forged competency form. You might want to contact the medical board. I already did. 2 months ago. Someone stole a stack of my letterhead from the office. I reported it. Thought it was a billing scam. Martin thanked him, hung up, looked at Harold. They've got a fake doctor and forged letterhead. The moment they try to use that in court, they're looking at felony charges. But they don't know we know, Harold said. Exactly. So, we wait. Let them make their move, then we hit them with everything at once. Martin helped Harold log into the old work email. Took 20 minutes and a password reset, but they got in. 14 emails from Emma, each one with an audio file attached. Martin played the first one. Linda's voice filled the office. We use the dementia angle. Get Dr. Carter to sign off. Then the judge rubber stamps it. Harold won't even know what hit him. Martin stopped the recording. That's conspiracy to commit elder abuse. On tape. They listened to 3 more. Derek talking about timber rights. Jessica asking if they were sure. Linda laying out the timeline. Next week. We can't wait any longer. When the last one finished, Martin sat back in his chair. Harold, I'm filing an emergency injunction first thing tomorrow. The moment they submit any paperwork to a court, I'll block it. But we need to be ready. Ready for what? For them to try this face-to-face. An intervention. They'll bring their fake doctor, present the forms, pressure you to sign. That's when we spring the trap. Harold felt the weight of it. What if it doesn't work? It'll work. You're not alone in this. Martin handed him a business card. My cell phone's on the back. You call me anytime, day or night. Ray's watching your house. Emma's feeding us evidence. We've got this. Harold took the card, slid it into his wallet next to the photograph of his father standing in front of the barn. The old man had broken his back clearing that land. Harold wasn't going to let it get stolen by people who saw it as nothing but dollar signs. He drove home in the late afternoon sun. When he pulled into the driveway, Linda's car was there, and so was Derek's truck. They were inside, waiting. Harold sat in his truck for a moment, hands on the steering wheel, looking at Derek's truck parked beside Linda's car. He could see movement through the kitchen window, shadows passing back and forth. And he got out slow, closed the truck door quiet, and walked to the house. Inside, Linda and Derek stood at the kitchen counter. They stopped talking the moment he walked in. "There you are," Linda said, her voice bright and false. "We were wondering where you'd gone." "Had some errands," Harold said. Derek leaned against the counter, arms crossed. He was 41, built like he spent too much time at the gym and wanted everyone to know it. "Harold, we need to talk. Family meeting tomorrow night, 6 o'clock." "About what?" "About you," Linda said. She moved closer, put her hand on his arm like she used to do when they were younger. "We're worried, honey. You've been forgetting things, acting confused. We think it's time to see someone." Harold looked at her hand on his arm. Her wedding ring caught the light from the kitchen window. 42 years, that ring had been on her finger. "I'm not confused," he said. "That's what concerns us," Derek said. "You don't see it." "That's part of the problem." Harold pulled his arm free from Linda's hand. "Who's we?" "Jessica and I," Linda said. "Derek, we've all noticed it." "Noticed what exactly?" Linda glanced at Derek, then back at Harold. "The trash day. You've asked me 3 times this week. The stove. You left it on last Thursday. You forgot about Derek's truck payment comment at church." "I never left the stove on," Harold said, his voice flat. "And I never said anything about Derek's truck." "You don't remember," Linda said, patient as a school teacher. "That's what we're trying to tell you." Derek pushed off from the counter. "Look, old man, we're trying to help you here. Tomorrow night, 6 o'clock. We're bringing someone who can evaluate you properly. If you're fine, great. This all goes away. If not, we'll figure out what comes next. And if I don't want to be evaluated?" "Then that tells us something too," Derek said. Harold looked at both of them. Linda's face was concerned, caring, the perfect mask. Derek's was harder to read, confidence mixed with something else. Impatience, maybe, or greed. "I'll think about it," Harold said. 6 o'clock, Linda repeated. "Please, Harold, do this for us, for Jessica." After Derek left, Linda made dinner, served it to Harold on a tray by the couch, like he was an invalid who couldn't sit at the table with her. She ate in the kitchen, the sound of her fork on the plate, the only noise in the house. That night, after Linda went upstairs, Harold walked out to the property line. Ray's porch light was on, their signal. He found Ray standing in the darkness between their houses, barely visible. "They're doing it tomorrow," Harold said. 6 o'clock. Bringing a doctor. "The fake one. Dr. Carter." Ray pulled out his phone. "I'll record it through the east window. Martin knows?" "I'll call him." "You ready for this?" Harold thought about the land, his father's land. The back 40 where he'd learned to drive a tractor when he was 12. The barn where he'd helped birth calves on winter nights so cold your breath froze in your lungs. "I'm ready," he said. Ray put a hand on his shoulder. "You're not alone, Hal." Harold went back to the house. The bedroom door upstairs was closed, a strip of light showing underneath. Linda was still awake. He lay down on the couch, springs creaking under his weight, and stared at the ceiling. Tomorrow at 6 o'clock, they'd spring their trap, but he'd be ready with his own. Harold spent the day moving slow, like a man with all the time in the world. He shaved, put on a clean shirt, the blue button-down Linda had bought him 3 Christmases ago, ironed it himself, taking care with the collar. If they were going to ambush him in his own living room, he'd at least look like a man who had his wits about him. At 5:30, he made coffee, strong and black, the way he'd drunk it for 50 years. Carried it to the living room and sat on the couch, his couch now, not theirs, and waited. Ray would be at the east window by 5:45. Martin was on standby, phone in hand. Emma's recordings were downloaded and ready. The folder sat under the couch cushion within arm's reach. At 6 o'clock exactly, car doors slammed in the driveway. Linda came in first, then Jessica. His daughter looked like she hadn't slept in days, dark circles under her eyes, her hands worrying at the strap of her purse. Derek followed, and behind him, a man Harold had never seen before. 40-something, cheap suit, carrying a briefcase like it made him important. Last through the door was an elderly woman with a notary stamp hanging from a lanyard around her neck. They arranged themselves in the living room like actors taking their marks. Linda sat beside Harold on the couch. First time she'd sat next to him in 3 weeks. Her hand found his knee, a gesture that might have looked loving to someone who didn't know better. "Dad," Jessica started, but her voice cracked. She tried again. "We're all here because we love you, and we're worried." "Worried about what?" Harold asked. He kept his voice level, curious but not defensive. "Your memory," Linda said softly. "You've been forgetting things, acting confused. We think it's time to get you checked out, just to be safe." The man in the cheap suit leaned forward. "Mr. Patterson, I'm Dr. Carter. I specialize in geriatric care. Your family's asked me to do a brief evaluation." "I didn't agree to any evaluation," Harold said. "It's voluntary, of course." Dr. Carter smiled, showing too many teeth. "But refusing can be concerning. A rational person would want to know if there's an issue." There it was. The trap, simple as a snare. Say yes, and they control the evaluation. Say no, and the refusal itself becomes evidence of incompetence. "What kind of evaluation?" Harold asked. Dr. Carter pulled papers from his briefcase. "Standard cognitive assessment, memory, reasoning, decision-making capacity. Very simple. If everything checks out, we all go home relieved. And if it doesn't," Linda squeezed his knee, "then we talk about getting you some help. Maybe a place where professionals can keep an eye on you. Make sure you're safe." "You mean Meadowbrook Memory Care," Harold said. The room went still. Linda's hand stopped moving on his knee. "How do you—" Derek started, then caught himself. Harold looked at his son-in-law. "The one that costs $8,500 a month. You've already toured it, haven't you?" Derek's face flushed red. "We're just exploring options." "Options for what? I'm sitting right here, sound as I've ever been, and you're talking about locking me up." "Dad, please." Jessica's voice was small, pleading. "We're trying to help you." "By forging property appraisals. By measuring my land without permission? By telling the whole town I'm losing my mind?" Dr. Carter set a document on the coffee table, trying to regain control of the room. "Mr. Patterson, I understand you're upset, but this kind of paranoia can be a symptom." "It's not paranoia when it's true," Harold said. He reached under the couch cushion and pulled out the folder, set it on the coffee table with a sound like a judge's gavel. "This," Harold said, opening it to the first page, "is a property appraisal with my signature forged on it. That's fraud." He pulled out Ray's photographs. "These are pictures of Derek measuring my land, moving survey stakes, trespassing with intent to steal." Dr. Carter's face had gone pale. Harold pulled out printed transcripts. "These are recordings of Linda and Derek discussing the dementia angle and selling my timber rights before I know what's happening. That's conspiracy to commit elder abuse." He looked directly at Dr. Carter. "And this is a sworn statement from Dr. Leonard Yates confirming that he never wrote a competency evaluation for me and that someone stole his letterhead 2 months ago." Harold picked up the document Dr. Carter had set on the table, looked at the header. "Which means this form you're holding, with Dr. Yates's name on it, is a forgery. That's a felony, Dr. Carter. Or should I say, whoever you really are." Dr. Carter stood up fast, grabbed his briefcase. "I don't know what you're talking about. I was asked to consult. I didn't know—" "Leave," Harold said. "Now." The man practically ran for the door. The notary shifted uncomfortably in her chair. "I think maybe I should—" "Stay," Harold said. "I'm going to need you in a minute." He turned to Derek, whose face had gone from red to white and back to red again. "You said Linda had this all figured out. You said I'd never find out. Want to explain that?" Derek's mouth opened and closed like a fish on a dock. Linda's hand had left Harold's knee. She sat rigid beside him, her face carved from stone. It was her, Derek said, the words tumbling out. Her plan, the trust document, the fake diagnosis, all of it. She came to me, said the land was going to triple with the bypass, said we could all be set if we just— "Shut up, Derek," Linda hissed. But Harold had already heard it, already understood. Not Derek's plan, Linda's. His wife of 42 years had orchestrated the whole thing. Harold stared at his wife, really looked at her for the first time in weeks, maybe years. The woman beside him on the couch had Linda's face, Linda's hands, Linda's silver hair pulled back the way she'd worn it since her 50s. But the person inside, he didn't know her at all. "Linda," he said quietly, "you planned this. All of it." She didn't deny it, didn't apologize, just lifted her chin and met his eyes with something hard and cold. "Your father left that land to you," she said. "After 42 years of marriage, he left it to you alone, like I didn't matter, like I hadn't cooked his meals and washed his clothes and sat with him when he was dying. So you decided to take it. I decided to secure my future, our daughter's future." Her voice didn't waver. "I'm not dying poor in some state nursing home like my mother did, Harold. I watched her waste away in that place, alone, with nothing. I swore I'd never end up like that. So you were going to put me in a home instead. You would have been comfortable. Meadowbrook is nice, clean, professional staff." Harold felt something break inside him. Not his heart. That had broken weeks ago, maybe even years ago without him noticing. This was something else. The last thread of hope that this was all a misunderstanding, a mistake, something that could be fixed if they just talked it through. "You practiced my signature," he said. "On that appraisal?" "How long did it take you to get it right?" Linda said nothing. "The trust document, the memory care brochure with your notes about timber rights paying for 18 months, the church gossip, the pharmacy, telling everyone I was losing my mind." Harold's voice stayed level, almost conversational. "You built a cage for me, brick by brick, and I almost walked right into it." Jessica was crying now, quiet tears running down her face. "Mom, you said Dad was really sick. You said we were helping him." "Grow up, Jessica," Linda snapped. "He was never going to sell that land. We'd have been stuck here forever, waiting for him to die. I wasn't waiting anymore." The room went silent. Even Derek seemed shocked at the coldness in her voice. Harold pulled out the last documents from his folder. "Here's what happens now. You're going to sign quitclaim forms on every piece of paper you forged, every trust amendment, every power of attorney, every authorization. You're going to undo this legally on record with the notary as witness. And if we don't," Derek found his voice, though it came out shaky, "Martin Priest takes this folder to the county prosecutor tomorrow morning. You get arrested for fraud, elder abuse, conspiracy. Dr. Carter, or whoever he really was, will flip on you to save himself. You'll do prison time." Linda's jaw tightened. "You won't. You'd have to testify against me. Admit to the whole county that your wife tried to have you committed. Everyone would know." "I don't care," Harold said. "My dignity isn't for sale. Yours apparently is." The silence stretched out. Harold could hear the clock on the mantel ticking. Outside, a car drove past on the county road, its engine fading into the distance. Derek broke first. "Where do I sign?" Harold pulled out the documents Martin had prepared, handed them to the notary, who'd gone pale and quiet in her chair. She looked them over, nodded that they were in order. Derek signed fast, his hand shaking, didn't even read what he was signing, just wanted it over with. Jessica took the pen next. Her tears fell on the paper, smudging the ink slightly. "Dad, I'm so sorry. I didn't know it was like this. I thought—" "You thought it was okay to steal from me as long as I was really sick?" Harold kept his voice flat. "You chose money over me, Jessica. Own it." She signed, pushed the papers away like they burned her hands. Linda was last. Harold slid the document across the coffee table to her. She picked up the pen, held it for a long moment. Her hand was steady. She wasn't sorry, just caught. She signed her name. The pen dug into the paper hard enough to tear it slightly. She looked at Harold. You think you've won? You're going to die alone in this house, and everything you protected will go to strangers because you drove your family away. Better alone with my dignity than surrounded by people who'd sell me for a piece of land. The notary stamped the documents, signed and dated each one, handed copies to Harold. Her hands were shaking. You can all leave now, Harold said. Derek stood first, walked out without a word, got in his truck, and drove away. Harold knew, watching him go, that Derek wouldn't be back. Men like that didn't stick around when they lost. Jessica lingered at the door. Dad, can I? Not now. Maybe not ever. Go home. She left, sobbing. Linda stood, but didn't move toward the door. This marriage is over. It's been over since you put me on that couch, Harold said. I just didn't know it yet. She walked upstairs. Harold heard the bedroom door close. Not slam, just close. That same quiet, final sound that had been haunting him for weeks. He sat alone in the living room, the signed documents on the coffee table in front of him. Outside the window, he saw Ray's silhouette against the darkness. Phone still recording. Ray had heard everything, captured everything. Harold picked up the documents, held them in his hands. The land was safe. Emma's future was protected. But the house felt empty now. Hollow. Like something had been carved out of it, and nothing would ever fill the space again. He'd won. He just wasn't sure what winning was supposed to feel like. Morning came cold and gray. Harold woke on the couch, still the couch, even though the war was over, and his back didn't hurt as much as it had those first few nights. Maybe he'd gotten used to it, or maybe he just didn't care anymore. The house was silent. Linda's bedroom door stayed closed. Derek's truck hadn't come back. The driveway held only Linda's car and Harold's truck, and the space between them felt wider than 50 feet of gravel. Harold made coffee, stood at the kitchen window watching the sun struggle up through the clouds. Ray was on his porch across the way, same as always. When he saw Harold at the window, he raised his mug in a small salute. Two survivors, drinking their morning coffee. Harold walked over. His boots crunched through frost on the grass, the first real cold of autumn settling in. Derek filed for divorce this morning, Ray said. Heard it from Margaret at the courthouse. She called me an hour ago. That was fast. Men like him don't stick around when the money disappears. Ray poured Harold a cup from the pot on his porch table. Martin's been trying to call you. Says the prosecutor wants to know if you're pressing charges. Harold wrapped his hands around the mug, felt the heat seep into his palms. Against Linda? Against all of them. Fraud's pretty clear-cut. Harold watched the steam rise from his coffee, thinking about Linda upstairs in the guest room she'd moved into. Thinking about Jessica and her kids, his grandkids, who'd be caught in the middle of criminal charges. Tell Martin I'm not interested in charges against Linda. Let the prosecutor scare her, but I don't want her arrested. Ray raised an eyebrow. That's more generous than she deserves. It's not generosity. It's pragmatism. Harold took a sip, bitter and hot. She goes to prison. Jessica's kids lose their grandmother. They've already lost their grandfather. I'm not doing that to them. What about Derek? Derek can rot, but he already ran, so that's his own problem now. They sat quiet for a while, watching the light change over the back 40. The land looked different now. Not the burden Linda had seen, not the gold mine Derek had imagined. Just land, good land, the kind a man could work if he wanted to, or leave fallow if he didn't. You going to change your will? Ray asked. Already did. Martin filed the new trust yesterday. Everything skips Jessica, goes to Emma when she turns 25. That's harsh on your daughter. She made her choice. Harold set his mug down. Emma's the one who stood up. She's the one who gets the land. Ray nodded. What about Linda? She's still your wife, legally. Life estate in the house. She can live here till she dies, but she'll never control the assets, never sell the land. Harold looked at his neighbor. We'll live like roommates, I guess. Separate rooms, separate lives. That's lonely, Hal. Yeah. But loneliness is just the price of keeping your dignity. A week later, Emma came by. She was quieter than usual, her eyes red like she'd been crying. Harold made her tea. She didn't drink coffee yet, and they sat on the porch. "Mom won't talk to me," Emma said. "She's furious I helped you." "I know. I'm sorry you got caught in the middle." "I'm not sorry." Emma wrapped her hands around the mug, same way Harold did. "Derek's gone." Mom cries in her room, but she won't admit she's sad. She's not sad about Derek. She's sad she lost. Emma looked out at the fields. "Grandpa, Martin told me about the trust. That's too much." Harold reached over, put his hand on hers. "You're the only one who stood up when it mattered. The land should go to someone who values it for what it represents, not what it's worth." "What does it represent?" "That some things aren't for sale. Not your integrity, not your family's legacy, not your self-respect." Emma's eyes filled up. "I got into RISD, full scholarship, Rhode Island School of Design." Harold felt pride swell in his chest, the first good feeling he'd had in weeks. "Emma, that's one of the best art schools in the country." "I'm going, but I'm coming back. This place is home." She looked at him. "Can I still come fishing on Saturdays?" "Every Saturday," Harold said, "long as I'm breathing." After Emma left, Harold went back inside. The house was quiet except for the sound of water running upstairs. Linda, taking a shower. They'd barely spoken since the signing. She left his meals on the counter, ate hers in her room. They passed in the hallway like strangers. No words, just the shuffle of footsteps and the closing of doors. That evening, she came downstairs for water. First time they'd been in the same room in days. "The fence on the north side is falling down," she said, not looking at him. "I know. Fixing it this weekend. Do you need help?" Harold looked up from his newspaper. "No." She stood there for a moment, the glass of water in her hand, backlit by the kitchen light. She looked older than he remembered. Tired. "We can't live like this forever," she said. "Why not?" "Because it's miserable." "You made it miserable," Harold said. "I'm just living in what you created." Linda's voice cracked slightly. "I was scared." "Of being poor, of being powerless, of ending up like my mother. So you tried to make me powerless instead." "That's not an excuse, Linda. That's just selfishness." She started to say something else, then stopped, just nodded, turned, and went back upstairs. Harold listened to her footsteps fade, the bedroom door close, and then silence. He picked up his newspaper but didn't read it, just stared at the words until they blurred together. 3 months later, an envelope arrived. Jessica's handwriting. Inside, a short note. "Dad, I know I don't deserve forgiveness, but I'm trying to be better. Can we talk? J." Harold read it twice, folded it, put it in his shirt pocket. He wasn't ready yet. Maybe someday, maybe never. But it was something. A crack in the wall, thin as a razor blade, letting in the smallest sliver of light. 1 year later, Harold sat on his porch at dawn with his coffee, same as he'd done for 20 years. But the ritual had changed. Ray was there beside him, his own mug in hand, and Emma's fishing rod leaned against the porch rail. She'd stayed overnight in the spare room, the one that used to be for guests, now just hers whenever she wanted it. "Year ago today," Harold said. "Linda put me on that couch." Ray sipped his coffee. "Lots changed since then. Most of it for the better." Ray looked at him. "You mean that?" "I do. Lost a wife I didn't really have anyway. Gained a friend I can count on. Learned which family matters." Harold watched the mist rise off the back 40. "That's a fair trade." Emma came out onto the porch, her hair still wet from the shower, carrying her own mug of tea. At 17 now, she looked more like her mother every day, but she had something Jessica had lost somewhere along the way, a backbone. "I got my acceptance letter yesterday," Emma said. "Official, RISD, full scholarship." Harold felt his chest tighten with pride. "That's my girl. I'm coming back after, though. Going to build a studio out here someday. Paint the fields, the light on the pond." She looked at him. "Does Mom know?" "I told her last night." She cried. "Happy tears?" I think so. She's proud of you, Em. Whatever else happened, she loves you. Emma sat on the porch step, her back against the rail. Are you ever going to really talk to her again? Not just weather and bills? Harold considered it. We talk. That's enough. That's sad, Grandpa. Maybe, but it's honest. And honest is better than fake. After Emma left for the day, she had a part-time job at the art supply store in town. Harold drove to church. Sunday service. He didn't go every week anymore, just when he felt like it. Today, he felt like it. Jessica was there with her kids. She'd lost weight over the past year, looked worn down by single parenthood and whatever shame she carried. When she saw Harold after the service, she approached carefully, like you'd approach a horse that might spook. Dad, can I buy you coffee? At the diner? Harold looked at her for a long moment, then nodded. Sure. They sat in a red vinyl booth, black coffee between them, neither one touching the pie the waitress had brought. I don't expect forgiveness, Jessica said. Her voice was small, careful. I just wanted to say, I see it now. What you did, standing up to Mom, protecting the farm, you were right. I wasn't right. I was just unwilling to be wrong. Derek doesn't see the kids, doesn't pay support. I'm doing it alone. You're stronger than you think. Jessica's eyes filled. I learned that from you. Took me too long, but I learned it. Harold added sugar to his coffee, something he never did. Just needed something to do with his hands. What do you want from me, Jessica? Nothing. I want my kids to know their grandfather. Not the man I betrayed, but the man you are now, if you'll let them. Harold thought about it. About boundaries and second chances and whether some breaks could ever really heal. Sundays, after church, they can come to the farm, help with chores, fish with Emma. But not you, not yet. Jessica nodded, tears spilling over. That's fair. Thank you, Dad. They finished their coffee without saying much else. When they left, Jessica touched his arm briefly, and he didn't pull away. It wasn't forgiveness, but it was something. That evening, Harold found Linda in the kitchen. She was making dinner, for herself as usual, but she paused when she saw him. I heard you had coffee with Jessica, she said. She told you? She tells me everything now. Trying to rebuild trust, I guess. Harold poured himself water from the tap. That's good. Linda set down her wooden spoon. Harold, I need to say something. I'm not asking for anything. I just need to say it. He waited. I was wrong. Not just about the scheme. I was wrong about you. I thought you were weak because you were quiet. I thought the land was wasted because you wouldn't sell it. I thought I was smarter, more practical. Her voice cracked slightly. I was just greedier and meaner. I know, Harold said. That's it. I know? What do you want me to say? That I forgive you. I don't. That I understand. I do. But it doesn't change anything. Do you think we'll ever be anything again? Friends, even? Harold looked at his wife of 43 years. No, we'll be civil. We'll share this house. When I die, you'll have life estate. But we won't be friends. That ship sailed when you forged my signature. Linda nodded slowly, accepting it. For what it's worth. I'm sorry. I believe you, Harold said. Doesn't fix it, but I believe you. She went back to her cooking. He took his water to the porch. Later, Ray came over with his pipe, and they sat in the evening air, watching the sun set over the land Harold's father had cleared by hand 60 years ago. You ever regret it? Ray asked. Fighting back, I mean. You could have signed that paper, lived in memory care, never known the difference. I'd have known, maybe not consciously, but somewhere deep, I'd have known I surrendered. And that would have been worse than losing Linda, Jessica, the marriage? Yeah, because those things, they were already lost. I just didn't see it. But my dignity, my self-respect, those I could still choose to keep. So I did. Ray puffed his pipe, smoke curling up into the darkening sky. You're a stubborn old bastard. Takes one to know one. Emma's truck pulled up, groceries in the back. She waved, and Harold waved back. Ray smiled. You got it good, Hal. Better than most. Harold watched his granddaughter carry bags toward the house, the land golden in the sunset behind her. "Yeah," he said. I do." 3 weeks after that conversation with Ray, Harold found himself alone on the porch at dawn. Same place he'd been standing when this whole thing started, same coffee cup in his hand, same view of the back 40 stretching out toward the tree line. But everything was different now. Linda was upstairs, living her separate life. Jessica was finding her way back, slow and careful, bringing the grandkids on Sundays. Emma was packing for art school, her future bright and earned. Ray was across the property line, close enough to matter. Harold took a sip of his coffee, still black, still bitter, still exactly how he liked it. 43 years he'd spent building a life with Linda. Took her 3 months to try and steal it. Took him 3 more to save it. Some men would call this lonely. Living separate from your wife in the same house. Daughter at arm's length. Grandkids on supervised visits. But loneliness was just the word people used when they didn't understand the difference between being alone and being at peace. He was alone in the ways that counted. No one shared his bed, his morning coffee, his evening thoughts. But he wasn't lonely. He had land that was his. A granddaughter who'd chosen integrity over family peace. A neighbor who'd go to war beside him. And a conscience that let him sleep at night even on a couch with bad springs. That was more than most men got. The sun cleared the tree line, spilling light across the back 40. Gold on the stubbled fields, gold on the old barn, gold on everything his father had built and Harold had protected. Harold Patterson, 68 years old, factory foreman retired, husband in name only, father at a careful distance, took a sip of his coffee and decided this was enough. More than enough. This was everything that mattered. Behind him, the screen door creaked open. Emma, early for their Saturday fishing. "Ready, Grandpa?" Harold smiled. "Yeah, I'm ready." They walked toward the pond together, fishing rods over their shoulders, the morning breaking clean and new around them. Some things were worth fighting for. Some things were worth the cost. And dignity, the kind you chose, the kind you protected, the kind you kept even when everything else was stripped away, that was the thing worth keeping, most of all.